sorry. So predict changes in impacts and provide evidence in order to make informed decisions to mitigate, protect, adapt, and restore marine resources. The image presented here depicts a variety of instruments and platforms oceanographers use to collect information and integrate the global ocean observing system, GOOS. With advances in technology, our capacity to observe the ocean has much improved along the years, but there is still a lot more to do. Next slide, please. So in one aspect, for instance, our capacity of observing the ocean, the physical components of the ocean, is far superior than our capacity to monitoring the biological aspects. And although 2/3 of the ocean is in the southern hemisphere, the vast region is much less observed and described than the ocean basins in the northern hemisphere. Opportunities to study the southern hemisphere are limited by difficult access, but also by the concentration of financial, scientific, and technological resources in the northern hemisphere. This is particularly true for developing nations. Without sufficient ocean research and observation capacity to match their needs. Next slide, please. So capacity development focused organizations, such as those represented in this side event today and others that I can see in the audience, work individually and collectively to repair this imbalance by providing training, networking, and technology transfer opportunities for scientists and institutions in developing countries. The objective is to provide support so these nations can build a self-sustaining ocean science and observational communities. A variety of approaches are employed for this aim, which include support development of low-cost instruments, as well as dedication to outreach and advocacy. But the major need, as pointed at the Global Ocean Science Report, is in human capacity. Therefore, our organizations work on providing training to researchers, students, and technicians, especially from developing nations. So we can equip these early career professionals with scientific and technical skills needed to implement and maintain ocean observations. Next. So our organizations deploy different training modalities, each with particular benefits. I will use some of my organization, POGO, and our partners' trainings to briefly exemplify these. Next, please. So in these programs of visits to advanced oceanographic institutes, the trainees are provided extended exposure to trainers in world-leading oceanographic institutes. In the Nippon Foundation POGO Center of Excellence, the program receives annually 10 students from 10 different countries for an immersed hands-on training in observational oceanography at the Alfred Wegener Institute in Germany. And with the POGO SCOR Visiting Fellowship, early career scientists receive between 1 and 3 months training in an ocean institute of their choice. This program increases the potential for education and networking as the trainees work side by side with experts and are exposed to state-of-the-art equipment and techniques. POGO and SCOR experience show that the contact between host supervisor and SCOR institute and trainee are sustained for long periods, usually including publications or post-graduation mentorships. Next, please. An alternative is rather than taking the trainees to the mentors, in this modality, we bring the experts to developing countries for conducting training for 2 weeks up to 3 months. Such trainings are more cost-benefit as they reach a higher number of trainees with a smaller budget. Moreover, these trainings are suited for issues relevant to the host institutions using locally available technology. It is not uncommon for the instructor to return on the following years and keep a relation of research and mentoring with the host institute and the trainees. Next, please. POGO and partners created the Ocean Training Partnership, which aims to provide early careers with skills needed to organize and run oceanographic cruises. To do so, we make use of empty vessels that are on their way or to or from other expeditions, to run floating summer schools, or field starbirds, or regular scientific expeditions with a trainee. This way, the host supervisors receives help with their work on board, but also pass their knowledge to the trainees. In some cases, the trainees pass a period prior and or after the cruise at the host institute, helping with the logistics or with analysis and processing of the samples. Next, please. Finally, advances in information and communication technologies and constraints from the pandemic boosted e-learning over the last 2 years. This shows strong advantages, in particular on how broad they can reach and provide training for an international group, each in their own country and time zone at relatively very low cost. Furthermore, the content can be regularly updated and available for the students or others for a longer period after its conclusion. Currently, we have been seeing hybrid trainings where the theoretical part is remote and the hands-on sessions are in person for a selected subgroup of trainees. Best examples is the Ocean Teacher Global Academy from the International Intergovernmental Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange of UNESCO. The Ocean Teacher has regional centers in diverse countries and an e-learn platform that hosts dozens of courses in ocean-relevant subjects. These courses are offered in different languages, which helps to overcome language barriers. Next, please. So these examples of trainings are some of the programs available by organizations listed here. We recognize that scientific capacity is necessary for understanding and proper management of the ocean and its resources. And by combining our efforts, we aim to help improve ocean observations globally. This can only be done by bringing scientists and institutions of developing nations to contribute to truly global networks, as well as continuing the dissemination of knowledge. If you are interested in contribute or attend one of the capacity development programs presented here, and by the colleagues in the following presentations, make sure you contact us. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward for your questions.
Thank you very much, Lita. That was an excellent presentation. Our next speaker is Dr. Filomena Cardoso Martins from the Department of Environment and Planning and Center for Environmental and Marine Studies of the University of Aveiro in Portugal. Dr. Filomena Cardoso Martins oversees the Environmental Science and Engineering Doctoral Program and Master in Marine and Atmospheric Sciences at the University of Aveiro. She is responsible for the coordination of the Ocean Teacher Global Academy Regional Training Center of Portugal and a member of the Portuguese Committee for the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Patricia. Well, everyone, and thank you for giving me some time to introduce you to the UNESCO IOC Ocean Teacher Global Academy, also known as OTGA. Next, please. The Ocean Teacher Global Academy is a long-term project of IOC, of UNESCO, funded by the government of Flanders in Belgium. The second phase of the Ocean Teacher Global Academy starts in April 2020, and the project builds on the legacy of the previous project and includes new initiatives and challenges now in place, such as the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals, and also the UN Decade on Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. Its main goals are its main goals are develop a portfolio of package courses related to the needs of IOC, but also the needs of other partners and stakeholders, and also deliver courses online and or blended learning, as well as on-site through the training centers on demand. OTGA is an endorsed UN Ocean Decade project since October 2021. Its main contribution to the decade includes providing relevant and customized training on the different topics, and they are relevant to the different audience and stakeholders. Next, please. Next, please.
Yes,
okay.
no,
thank you. OTGA supports training that address all IOC functions, focusing specifically on output one, the IOC capacity development strategy. That means human resources development. It does so specifically by assisting with continuous professional development, including promoting and assisting with the organization of training courses, workshops and summer schools, as well as assisting with the establishment of training centers, and also promoting and facilitating the sharing of training resources. Next one, please. Has already Lika mentioned, OTGA works in a partnership with the IOC member states and its institutions, and it's now a network of 17 regional and specialized training centers. These RTC and STC plays an essential role as they help tailoring courses to the regional specific needs, provide training in the language that are relevant to the regions, and also host the face-to-face courses that are sometimes done. An important aspect of OTGA approach is the language of training. Even though English is still the main language used for most of the courses, the use of other language is slowly increasing. This is thanks to the close collaboration with the training centers, who play an essential role, and also the flexibility to use the e-learning platform. This enables the participation of learners who otherwise would not able to follow the courses due to the language barriers. Course language include right now English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Besides the OTGA global network of training centers, another essential component, as already mentioned, is the OT e-learning platform. Next one, please. What does it mean in practices? The e-learning platform is the backbone of OTGA. Has a learning management system. It facilitates face-to-face learning, blended and online learning. The platform shared on the freeware model allows sharing content and learning between organizations and stakeholders, co-creating content and knowledge, and the recognition of the organization as well as the course developers. Anyone can access OTGA contents, and OTGA content is covered by the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 license. Besides the OT e-learning platform just described, there are also the important input, as I mentioned before, of the training of the regional and specialized training centers. Next one, please. Well, planning OTGA training courses is guided by the course management guidelines and the learning orientation compass, which describe the workflow and defines each process in the learning life cycle. This is extremely important process in the course design and delivery, since it allows us to define the best approach to each course. OTGA strives to deliver the best quality training possible. To this aim, OTGA established a quality management system that supports the design and delivery of training services. the compliance with these guidelines qualified courses to the ISO certification, the standards on learning services for non-formal education and training, describes the requirements for providers of learning services in non-formal education and training, and provides a common framework in the design, development, and delivery on non-formal education and training. This certification was established in 2018 and right now is a standard that we want to maintain. Next slide, please. Ocean Teacher was first established as a single training facility in Belgium in the late 2000. Back then, it was able to train around 150 people per year. With the establishment of the network of training centers in 2015, when it became the Ocean Teacher Global Academy, it starts to deliver more courses and train more people, including in partnership with other organizations. In 2000, this year was several impact due to the ban of travel, and all face-to-face courses were cancelled. However, OTGA was prepared to quickly adapt, and given the accumulated experience with its e-learning platform, was able to deliver a few courses even in 2020, mainly as synchronous online courses. Given the continuing impact of COVID pandemic, all training activities were done online only until now. In 2021 only, we was able to deliver over 30 courses, and more or less 1,000 successfully complete at least one of the courses. Next, please. Although Ocean Teacher primary focusing deliver training that enables IOC of UNESCO and its member states achieving the high-level objectives, including the UN Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, OTJ closely collaborates with many other organizations from UN to academia and NGOs, and some of them are here in this side event talking about the same process. This allows us to expand the topics of the courses offered, but also reaching out to wider audience. And the final one. Well, it is clear that we need to provide more opportunities for learning in order to reach all those who need it throughout their careers, and also to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. An Ocean Global Academy should offer free, online, blended and classroom courses and models related to the main ocean topics, with implementation of the SDG in mind, of course. This could become the training you when looking for specific training, not only during the ocean decade, but beyond that. OTGA is ready to become such training hub, delivering one when it comes to ocean topics. For further information, you can contact us to the links that you have in the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Filomena. That was great, and I hope that everybody there that's listening is encouraged to apply and respond to the invitation that you just received from Filomena and before from Radeka. Our next speaker is Dr. Radeka Situn, one of our early careers, and she works at the Marine Mineral Resource Group, GMR. the Helmholtz Center for Ocean Research in Kiel, Germany. Radeka works as a postdoctoral researcher in the field of trace metal biogeochemistry, toxicology, and environmental chemistry. She is a member of the SCOR Committee on Capacity Development and was a consultant for the International Atomic Energy Agency on scientific and institutional capacity building in small island developing states. The floor is yours, Radeka.
Thank you, Patricia, for this nice introduction, and thank you for having me. So today, like Patricia just said, I'm talking a wee bit about the special case of small island developing states I will call SIDS from now on, and in the framework of capacity development. Next slide, please. As we all know, the primary focus of the decade is to really provide a common framework to support all the countries in achieving ocean-related 2030 and gender priorities, and to help the countries to really produce the science they need for the ocean they want to create in the future. But we also know by now that achieving SDG 14 in countries that really lack the capacity and the capability to do the science they need is really an issue when it comes to achieving SDG 14 as a collective together. And that's where capacity development really comes into play. The Global North really must help these countries, not only because SDG 14 is a truly universal goal, but also because of the degradation of the ocean environment hits these countries the hardest. So we as the Global North really have a moral obligation to help the countries in the Global South. And these countries that are the heaviest affected by it are the SIDS. Next slide, please. So what are SIDS? Just a wee introduction. So we currently have 58 small island developing states that are located in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, and the IES regions. And SIDS are really a distinct group of islands and country states that really share similar sustainable development challenges. For example, they're remote geographically, really remote countries and island states. And they have a really growing coastal population. And what affects them a lot, especially during the pandemic, was that they have really limited resources. So they're highly dependent on trade and on import. And because they are really dependent on this trade, they were really vulnerable to the pandemic and to external shocks in general. And also what we've heard during the conference is that they're very, very susceptible to natural disasters, especially because most of the cities in these countries are very low-lying. So when we talk about sea level rise or increased weather strength, then these countries will be highly affected. And what we've also heard during the last 2 days is that SDG 14 is really critical for these countries because their societies, their culture, their livelihoods, and especially their economies are inherently linked with the ocean, with a healthy and productive and resilient ocean. And that is really why it's all the more concerning that these countries, that the SIDS really lack the overall capacity and capability to do the science they need. So we, the Global North, really have to step in and help them to stay afloat. Next slide, please. And we can help these countries by really putting effective capacity development activities in place, but always under the umbrella, and we have to keep that in mind, to help these countries to build the human capacity and the institutional capacity they need by themselves. We just help them to help themselves create ownership and leadership in these countries. And it's also nothing new, as you can see on the slide, that these countries, they have heaps of talent, lots of potential, awesome people down there and passionate people. But what they do lack is the financial resources, they do like the training, the equipment, the infrastructure, and the list goes on. And we already do heaps to do capacity development. It's not a new process. We do that since the 1970s. And all these lovely programs and initiatives I show on that slide, they do that already. We have the multilateral, the international ones, and the more regional ones like WIOMSA. And they're doing capacity development already. They're doing a lot of work. and we progressed a lot since the last decade. But we really have to point out that a lot of these capacity development activities are not as effective as we want them to be. Next slide, please. And why they're not effective? That becomes really obvious when we talk about small island developing states. Because they are not effective because they don't consider a lot of things from the get-go. One issue, for example, you can see on the slide on the lower right, is that they're not only really remote countries, which makes it already logistically really hard to do capacity development, but SIDS, as the word says, small island developing states, comprise several islands. Take Fiji, for example. Fiji has more than 300 islands, which makes monitoring efforts or putting infrastructure in place or putting logistics in place really, really hard. It's also time consuming and it's incredibly costly, and you need a lot of human capacity, just a lot of people to pull this off, which makes it incredibly hard. And another point, which always comes up also at the conference, is that most of the capacity development activities we do are really short term, but that doesn't help these countries because in those 3 years or 4 years, how long the projects usually last, for these countries, it's usually a time frame where they get to know each other, where people learn about their culture, about the way they're doing things, about what the requirements in these countries actually are. And it's not enough time to actually do the project. It's enough time to get to know each other, to learn about the culture, but not actually putting the project effectively in place, which is really sad. And of course, there are a lot of other things, as you can see on the slides. We have a loss of expertise because most of capacity development activities are not sustained long term. So if we train people down there, they leave for other countries because we don't create sustained opportunities down there. We have a huge issue of parachute science. I don't have to tell you that. Huge finance issue, as I explained beforehand. And of course, they don't have up-to-date data or data products in place in these countries. And because they don't have the money and the human resources in the first place, and if you don't have data to show how your science is developing, then you can't put policy in place. So it's a devil's circle down there. Next slide, please. So what we really and truly need is a holistic capacity development approach, meaning that we need to co-design, co-develop, and co-implement solutions from the get-go. And we need to do that with ECOPs, with early career ocean professionals, because they bring new ways of thinking and ideas to the table, and also because they're indeed the ocean leaders of tomorrow. We also, secondly, have to put local, realizing that the local community is really important, and that indigenous knowledge is of great value. And we also have to bring all the local relevant stakeholders into the equation and having a multi-sectoral approach. Meaning, if we really want to put effective capacity development in place, we need all the sectors and all the people involved. That is academia, we need governments, and we need industry, because these sectors are really interlinked. They support jobs, they generate the knowledge, and they're there for decision making. And really, the stronger the linkages between academia, science, and industry are, the more effective is capacity development. And that's really what we need. Next slide, please. So we really have to start co-producing science with all the relevant stakeholders and all the different stakeholders of different ages. So a multi-generational approach. And we have to do it in equal capacity. And we need to do our best to eliminate parachute science. We have to really establish transparency. So we actually have to know who's doing what and when, which is very difficult at the moment, even though we have the data. It's very hard to dig through all that to know who's doing what. We need increased funding and training, of course. And I can't say it enough. I'm a scientist myself. What we really have to do is to develop the technology. And I mean, technology that is low cost, that these countries can actually afford. Like I said, they don't have the finances in the first place. So we have to give them low cost technology that is as good or similar as good as the high cost technology. Next slide, please. And just to conclude, the take home message I have for you today is that if we want to make SITs equal partners in addressing global environmental, societal, and economic issues, that we really need to focus our capacity development activities regionally. We have to equitably distribute them all around the world. We need, of course, to regularly assess our efforts to really ensure that the activities we put in place are really effective and that they're appropriate to the local context. And if not, we have to change our approach with the locals together. And what we also need is that we put all the stakeholders together and that we work collectively on this issue. And most important is that we really need the financial resources. And that's where we really need to collaborate with the private sector and that really have to step up and bring financial resources to the table. And that's, yeah, my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Very inspiring. So our next speaker is Pedro Carrasco de la Cruz, another early career. He's at the Helmholtz Institute for Functional Marine Biodiversity in Germany. He's a Peruvian biologist, specialized in marine environments and ecosystem models, and a postgraduate in observational oceanography at the Nippon Foundation POGO Center of Excellence at the Alfred Wegener Institute for Polar and Marine Research. So he's currently, Pedro's currently doing his PhD candidate at the Biodiversity Theory Group of the Helmholtz Institute for Functional Marine Biodiversity. Pedro, please unmute yourself and let me know when you want me to pass your slides.
Okay, thank you, Patricia, for the opportunity. And yeah, I'm ready now to start. So I will introduce myself in the next slide. I think this probably is not so necessary since Patricia did already a very nice introduction on what I'm doing. I'm here to talk about my experience, basically, during the NF POGO Training Center of Excellence. Next slide, please. So yeah, as Patricia said already, I'm Peruvian. I'm currently seated in Germany in the second year of my PhD, and I do research in marine science. But this presentation is not about me, of course, it's about what the Center of Excellence represented for my career and what it represented also for a lot of other careers, because this training has already a long life and a long history. Next slide, please. So since I'm playing here the role of a representative, I thought that it would be fair also to let others express their voice. And since this is, of course, a presentation that has limited time, I thought that the best thing that I could do is to show a video of that my friends and I, or my colleagues that studied with me during the 10 months in Helgoland in Germany, that basically summarizes our experience during the training. So it's a 3-minute video, which I hope that you enjoy. Oh, the audio.
Can you hear it, Pedro?
No.
No?
No.
So there's this one.
Yeah, so you have to
This one
Yeah.
here.
share
Share
sound.
sound. Yes. Okay, let us know if you can hear it now, Pedro.
From chemical,
Yes,
physical,
now
and
it is.
biological oceanography to modeling, like ecological modeling. We also have many courses of statistics, like time series analysis, and also experimentation.
I had the opportunity to learn many things and to access to a scientific environment that I would not be able to access before. One of these things had been to work with model. We had this opportunity to work with physical and biological model.
The program also includes practical oceanographic experience on board the research vessel Hanke, and that it's really good because for those who haven't had a previous opportunity, now they can be part of an oceanographic expedition and learn from its planning to standard sampling procedures, equipment handling, and samples treatment for biological, chemical, and physical purposes. In my case, I worked with that samples to elaborate my independent research project in which I analyzed the distribution of nutrients in the German biome.
I assessed the impact of noise on zooplankton under supervision of Dr. Nelly, so it was all good.
I gained more knowledge and skill on oceanography, especially on the experiment and the lab work. I have improved my skill on presentations because we're giving a lecture to other POGO trainee.
It's a great opportunity to meet people from across the world to learn about their food, music, and culture. It just adds to the experience.
It was amazing actually to be selected to be one of the scholars. Changed me completely, especially in person, and also changed my background of science.
Even though we came from very different places, it was interesting to see how we shared the same ideas and sometimes even the same problems in our own countries, and especially it was enlightening to hear a new perspective from our professors during POGO classes.
Being part of the Center of Excellence has given us the chance to create a network of possible future collaborators. By being set in this international environment, we can reach professors, PhDs, postdocs who share similar interests than us. We have become part of the nano network of alumni, composed for students of past years of the Center of Excellence.
I think an important part of this program is that it realizes that ocean protection needs a global solution. The NF-POGO is a great program towards enhancing ocean sciences around the world, and we become a great catalyst for bigger efforts for our oceans.
The best part is that you not only learn oceanography, you get to explore your own creativity and find what connects you to the oceans.
Thank you. So I think that's pretty much summarizes what is the spirit of the POGO. So we can move to the next slide, please. Again, another click. Yes. So this training is equal part the people and equal part knowledge. So we are already in the 13th edition of the training, which started in Bermuda in Central America. Since 8 years ago, we moved to Helgoland, a small island in the North Sea, in which there's a station of the Alfred Wegener Institute. So 10 people are gathered from and they go through an application process and a selection process that is run by POGO and the ABI researchers, and they come to this island, to Germany specifically, and they live 10 months in which they learn about observational oceanography. But not only that, they also learn about their cultures, their shared experience, and this network of students share a bond after this. And since there are 30 years of history of this training, we have already 113 alumni that came from 5 continents and from 45 countries. So you see, it's a lot of people that have increased the family of this training. Next one, please. So one way in which we are connected after the training is collaborating in different projects. One of the projects in which I had the opportunity to participate is one that tried to outreach science in my country, in Peru. Since that situation was still difficult the last year in Peru due to the COVID pandemic, there was the opportunity to carry an online course in which we teach 13 students of undergraduate level about oceanography and in general about marine sciences. Me and 2 of my former colleagues in the POGO training, Andrea Mesquita and Antonella De Cian. Next slide, please. But it also focuses on the more scientific part in which establishes infrastructure and global projects like the one that Antonella is undercarrying in her former town in Puerto Madryn in Argentina, in which she developed a project to become part of this global project of Nano DOA project, and establish a permanent sampling station to monitor carboys and phytoplankton in Puerto Madryn. Next slide, please. So as you see, at the end, the outcome is the people that will help to spread science either in their country or wherever they go after they finish their studies. Some of the people after the training, they decide to give a step forward in their careers, either by studying a PhD or becoming a postdoc or whoever the stage is at the moment. Like for example, Andrea, who is in Canada, or Gabriel, who is in Germany, Sue in Ireland, Zoom in the Netherlands. They did a step forward, or For example, we had Charlotte or Edwin or Javier who went back to their countries and they are participating in different projects to research their own ocean in their, or to spread or to outreach science in their own countries. Next slide, please. So to summarize, I just want to reinforce the message that this training is actually in a perfect moment now in the framework of the UN Ocean Decade, since it brings people from the global south and then makes them, or they prepares them to manage data and to and they prepare this in equal parts in knowledge and in values to learn to how to protect the ocean and to search for solutions on how this global protection of the ocean can be reached from all the sides of the world. And next one, please. I just want to thank you again to POGO for this opportunity, and I'm open, of course, for questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I can see you had a lot of fun in that training. So we'll pass to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Ruiz Yaura, another early career. He's from the Centro de Investigación en Biodiversidad y Recursos Genéticos, CBIO, and Biopolis program in Genomics, Biodiversity, and Land Planning from Universidad do Porto, Portugal. So Ruiz is an intertidal ecologist. He's interested in how temperature influences species distributions across all scales. He heads implementation of a temperature and biodiversity collaborative observation network that will monitor more than 160 rocky shores across the Atlantic for over a decade.
All right, thank you. Okay, guys, so now I'm going to maybe following on Rebecca's presentation and looking more on the practical side on what us as researchers can do when we're thinking about the next project we're going to design and to implement and to apply for funding for, and how to build it in a way where maximizing the opportunities for capacity development without sacrificing the actual scientific goals of the project. So the project that I'm using in this example is a project that is kicking off in this year, where what we are interested in, and if someone wants specifics on this, they can drop me an email afterwards, but so I'll talk about it very briefly. Our focus is the rocky shores, so the absolute interface between oceanography and the out of the water world, but it's still the ocean. And so what we want to do is to measure temperatures in very high resolution and on the spot, so bypassing most of the remote observation limitations, and to also collect the biodiversity data set that matches that temperature data set, so that we can truly study the effects of global warming on rocky shores at a very high detail, but to do it on a very large scale. Next slide, please. So with this in mind, and as I said before, what we wanted to do in addition to accomplishing the scientific goals of the project was to, as much as possible, to maximize capacity development opportunities within this framework. And it basically rests on designing proper infrastructure and mobilizing local human resources, deciding new data ownership and making sure that it falls on the people that are actually collecting the data, opening data access and focusing on career development as much as possible, and also networking, but with a little bit more detail. So next slide. So as I said, we're focused on microhabitat temperature on the rocky shore, so looking at the very detailed structure of temperatures in each specific rocky shores. And to do that, we actually took a large step and decided to design our own sensors. We hired engineers with the money that we got for this proposal. And what this means is that we were able to design these temperature loggers that are very resilient, and as soon as they are deployed on the field, they will last on the field for over a decade. And so this means that all this infrastructure that we will be deploying at our own cost of this project will remain on the places where we deploy it. And since it's low maintenance and long lasting, it means that the collaborators we will have in all these places will then have access to the data from their own sites, and without having to cover the costs for that. Next slide, please. So as we, in addition to this, as we do the deployment of the loggers, we also make an explicit effort to connect with local researchers as much as possible. And we do the initial deployment in collaboration with those researchers so that they can receive hands-on training on how to implement this type of monitoring in other places if they want to, and also so that they have an intimate knowledge of how data is being collected so that they can use it afterwards in their own research. The subsequent data collection periods, because the data stays on the loggers and needs to be retrieved on site, it's also done by local researchers, which also lends them the more ownership and more steering about their own research and how the whole project is going. So it becomes a collaborative effort. Next slide. Now, obviously, since we're going to rely on multiple people to collect the data in the field, it's extremely important that we have traceable data ownership. And we do this because when we're collecting temperature data and also the biodiversity data sets, we use smartphones. And so it makes everything much easier. We're developing our own smartphone apps. And so all users will have their own ownership guaranteed throughout the metadata that is embedded on the data that is collected. And so there's always an ability to know who collected what piece of data. Next, please. Now, all data will be uploaded to a platform that will curate everything, but then delivers all data in full adoption of the FAIR data principles, and we will also provide full access to raw and processed data, not just the processed data. So all users can use it for all uses, and they can even revisit the data if they want, and they can do their own processing of the data, so they can modify their methodology if they so wish. Thanks. And now, where all this culminates is in this fact that is, I think, is extremely important. By making sure that researchers, especially early careers on all these locations, many of which, as Rebecca mentioned, are very low on resources, on financial resources, they will have access to the infrastructure, to the data, and that will mean that without any additional costs, they will be able to relate their own sites with sites on the region and even in the entire ocean. And what this means is that their research, instead of being just local, becomes regional or global. And obviously this culminates in broader and higher impact studies that will have certainly a lasting impact in their careers through the buildup of their CVs. So the access to this cost-free infrastructure and data will also allow these researchers and students to improve their training and publish better, which is something of a gap that usually is typical in these locations. Next, please. Lastly, obviously, this will also mean that all the contributors to the network and even the users as well will be now connected as part of this Atlantic-wide network, and this will certainly provide unique opportunities to engage directly with fellow researchers. So even people from low and middle income countries will now have a direct link through data analysis and share data sets to collaborate with higher level researchers from elsewhere. We will also promote regional in-person meetings, which we all know, and SCOR's experience is that they leverage a lot of networking, and they really improve the careers of those involved. And hopefully this will also open doors to the mobility of students through the sharing of data and the participation on larger scale studies. And so with this example, what I really wanted to showcase is the fact that even on a normal, as researchers, and when we design our next proposal, we need to consider, it's very important that we consider capacity development and use whatever tools and shape the project as much as possible so that it maximizes capacity development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rui. And I think you pointed out an excellent point, which is, well, when the technology is not there, you just go and develop it yourself. And that was an amazing example. So thank you very much for that. So we move to our last speaker, Professor Carol Robinson from the School of Environmental Science at the University of East Anglia in the UK. Carol studies the role of marine bacteria, phytoplankton, and zooplankton in the global cycling of carbon and oxygen, with a particular focus on determining the magnitude and variability of microbial respiration using a combination of ecological and biogeochemical techniques. She has led multidisciplinary research programs, including the Atlantic Meridional Transect and the Integrated Marine Biosphere Research Project INBER. And she, of course, has a passion for teaching. So, Carol, please unmute yourself and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Patricia. So this final presentation highlights a new initiative arising from discussions within the Integrated Marine Biosphere Research Project, IMBER, which were led by Eugene Murphy from the British Antarctic Survey and published last year in Frontiers in Marine Science. This initiative uses the lessons learned during the COVID-19 pandemic to create an action plan for the ocean. Next slide, please. So the COVID-19 pandemic has been a really serious test of how science can inform decision-making in the face of an immediate global threat, providing important lessons on how science, society, and policy currently interact in a crisis. The global human and monetary impact of COVID-19, which has so far claimed more than 6 million lives and is estimated to have cost tens of trillions of US dollars, has emphasized how we need to assess, plan, and prepare for potential future changes, including those arising from climate change and human activity, which threaten the ability of the ocean to maintain crucial services such as food production and climate mitigation. Over almost 2 decades, national and international risk assessment activities made it really clear that the likelihood of a global pandemic occurring and causing catastrophic international social and economic disruption was very high. Yet when the COVID-19 pandemic surged across the world, the response was slow, poorly coordinated, or even conflicting. The COVID-19 pandemic provides an insight into what can happen if available information on risk is not acted upon and appropriate planning put into place. Next slide, please. So the risks to societies and economies arising from human-driven changes in the ocean have also been recognised by the scientific community and highlighted to governments and public numerous times. For example, this figure from a 2018 report from the International Union for the Conservation of Nature by Laffoley and Baxter shows a number of potential risks to the ocean arising from hazards associated with ocean warming, including weather-related risks such as increased frequency of storms, biodiversity-related risks such as coral death, ocean process-related risks such as decreased ocean oxygen content, and risks related to societal use of the sea, such as increased prevalence of waterborne diseases and loss of tourism and recreational amenities. Despite there being multiple international and national bodies and independent organisations generating assessments of the state of the ocean and the likely impacts of future change, there is no coordinated global effort linking natural, social and economic sciences, leading to appropriate planning and action to reduce or manage these risks. We aim to fill this gap and call on the ocean science community to unite to develop an action plan for the ocean that underpins sustainable development and ensures that adaptive responses to risks are agile, well coordinated, effective and equitable. Next slide, please. The first thing that is needed to create such an action plan for the ocean is to develop a coherent framework to assess and rank the risks related to a changing ocean. Information on biological and societal vulnerability to climate change drivers, such as increasing temperature and decreasing pH, is regularly updated in a range of international reports and assessments. The challenge, though, is to develop an understanding of the relative importance of the potential risks to the ocean. This requires consideration of which risks are most likely, which could have the greatest impacts across what timescales these might occur, and which components of the ocean and society would be most severely affected. Maltby et al. Provide a regional example from the Gulf of Oman and the Northern Arabian Sea, where a group of 16 technical experts from 6 adjoining countries identified 15 climate change risks to marine biodiversity and habitats and 30 to the economy and society. These risks were scored on their perceived proximity and magnitude and the amount of evidence available to reveal that the highest ranked risks to be damage to coral reefs and fishing and flooding of infrastructure. Next slide, please. Based on the assessment and ranking of risks, options for action should be developed to generate viable science-based strategies for responding to these risks. These options for action should consider what happens if or when a particular event or set of events occurs, and what might be appropriate preemptive actions. This requires an understanding of both the multiple direct effects of change, as well as a wider exploration of potential knock-on effects, interactions and consequences. It's crucial that in developing options for action, all interests and perspectives are represented, especially local and indigenous communities who are often most directly exposed to risks associated with ocean change and therefore have really valuable long-term knowledge and perspectives that can inform the development of these actions. Next slide, please. Action implementation plans will then need to be developed. These would outline that for a given scenario X, action plan Y, including actions A, B, and C, will need to be implemented and supported via enhanced knowledge of specific processes D, E, and F. The ocean science community, in its widest and inclusive sense, is well placed to explore the implementation of actions to support such a planning process, since they have already developed such decision-based and adaptive approaches in some aspects of conservation and management. For example, harvest control rules used in fisheries provide a series of guidelines that determine appropriate catch levels or management actions within a fishery, and these are based on agreed indicators. Next slide, please. This step-based structure for the development of the action plan for the ocean will allow for continuous updating as circumstances change, new insights are gained, and risks are reassessed, similar to that already in place within other processes that regularly assess ocean environments, such as the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, the IPCC, the World Ocean Assessment, and the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Next slide, please. So in order to progress this action plan for the ocean, we need to develop intellectual and experiential capacity. That's capacity across demographics, sectors, disciplines, and geography, via summer schools, masterclasses, seminar series, and training activities within the successful networks of early career marine researchers and professionals, such as the IMBA Interdisciplinary Marine Early Career Network, IMICAN, and the Early Career Ocean Professional, ECOP network. The skills and experience required include the ability to successfully engage with a range of stakeholders, including local and indigenous communities, industry, economists, and natural and social scientists, to produce an agreed ranking of risks and options for mitigation and adaptation. Next slide, please. To develop this action plan for the ocean requires a level of coordination and integration across global, regional, and local scales that has never been done before. But new organisational structures are not required. Instead, effort is needed to bring together the existing initiatives and bodies with free and open sharing of datasets, information, and assessment in a trusted format. The knowledge and will are in place to do this, especially within the platform of the UN Ocean Decade. IMBA is willing to lead this forward, but it will obviously require much wider representation and participation from other existing networks and communities to co-design and co-implement this. Our next steps will be to develop an integrated ocean community and capacity, organise a targeted workshop to plan the way forward, including a proposal to become a UN Decade programme, and apply for the required research and facilitating funds. The challenge is urgent. Please get involved. Use the QR code to join the IMBA email list to receive information on the action plan activities. Without a coordinated response, the multiple effects of ocean change will make the disparate and sometimes ineffectual response to the COVID-19 pandemic look relatively successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carol. Really, that paper is a visionary paper, and I we hope that it's our responsibility to each of us to actually get involved and make it happen. So thank you very much for that. And thanks again to all the speakers. So just here as a reminder, we had the talk by Lynn Krug, by Filomena Cardoso Martins, Radeka Situn, Pedro Carrasco, Ruiz Abra, and Carol Robinson. And we are happy to take any questions from the chat.
So the first one is actually a request from Jimena. She couldn't take the QR codes from my last slide from my last presentation, so maybe we could bring it up again. There you go. Here it is, Jimena. Scan all of them. Okay, a comment from Whitney Friedman. OTGA sounds like an incredible program. Thank you for doing this work and for sharing here.
Well, I think that you need to try to use it and try to have some of the courses in order to really evaluate the quality of the program. And thank you for being so impressive about it. Okay.
It's really good. I have done a few two OTJ trainings myself, and this year I joined as an instructor. I'm really pleased.
So second generation already.
We have a comment from Mr. Lipta mentioning the limited capacity for the OTJ trainings. It's highly competitive.
Yeah, well, the capacity to fulfill all the requests for participation, it's not unlimited, it's limited itself, because all the process is based on the work of volunteer trainers. So we need to also, to be fair, to open the different courses for those who really are impacted by training courses in their in the real life, in the careers. So some of criteria can put aside persons that are, of course, interested in the courses, but don't have the specific profile for that courses. And if we accept always the same, we just make a closed circle of like a club of OTGA fans, and that's not the purpose. The purpose is to disseminate it and expand the process. And of course, these for some of the applicants sometimes is real frustrating. For us, it's real frustrating. Lilian already has this experience. The amount of applicants to the few short number of places. But well, we try to improve that in order to get this to overcross this problem with the platform access to the through the platform to the contents of the courses.
Thank you. Carol commented that I wonder if OTGA were increasing the range of languages, for instance, Mandarin. Do you know how many languages are?
Right now,
I know for sure Portuguese and
Portuguese, Spanish, and English.
And French, you mentioned.
French, there are also a few of them. Of course, well, as far as I know, and I don't know if Claudia is over here and won't jump up to say something more, but
yeah, can you
mute
release Claudia? Yeah.
She can unmute herself.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Claudia.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Apparently, my camera is refusing to work. Nevertheless, yes, Mandarin. Interesting question. Our policy is to, well, first, the languages are limited or determined by the availability of the training centers. And right now we have training centers working in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Unfortunately, French, we had a dropout. And the other side of this equation is that we try to provide training in languages that cover more than one country. Therefore, a Mandarin doesn't really address that question. So, for instance, Latin America, it's a great example because there are so many countries, Spanish-speaking countries, and we even have a training center that is actually providing training courses both in Portuguese and in Spanish, because it is a working language for that specific niche, geographic niche. So unfortunately, no, it's not possible to provide training in Mandarin only. We would love to start providing training in Arabic because this would address a gigantic geographical gap in capacity in training. But currently we don't have a suitable training center that would speak in Arabic.
Yeah.
But maybe in the next phase.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.
Question for Rui from Sophie. How did you scale up the production of the low-cost temperature loggers? I'm sorry if I missed it, but did you partner with a company to have them manufacture at a large scale, or are they being made by an academic institution? She mentions that we do have in POGO, we have a similar project, and it's still on prototype development. So yeah, it would be a valuable tip for us.
Yeah, we've all been there. Okay, thank you, Sophie. So basically what we did after going through what probably you're going through as well, we created our own startup. We searched for funding and we got engineers in our team and we build our own sensors. They're actually sold as well. I'll write down the name of the company in the chat if you guys want to have a look. But I can't do two things at the same time, sorry. So just drop us an email. We are researchers as well. We collaborate a lot, and we can do a lot of help in terms of either assisting you guys through steps towards a better design of the product, or actually partnering in terms of getting the loggers that you need for the tasks that you're trying to develop. Yeah, so it's basically we took it upon ourselves to solve the problem, because it is a recurring problem everywhere. Usually you go to, you're trying to get something that is very specific for a very given, a very narrow project, and there's usually not the device that you need, and companies usually do not take the steps to modify it the way you want. So we just did it ourselves.
I just want to add to that, because I met Rui several years ago at a training workshop that was in Mexico, and he brought with him all these wonderful things inside shells, and he trained on how to use them. But we were really impressed that it was, themselves who developed them. And then because he distributed along all the people from South America, and they all deployed it in the field for the next 1 year through a WhatsApp chat, he has been receiving feedback on the glue, on it's working, not working. And so they were able to actually fix all of the problems. And now that already they have the next generation, which Fernando Lima was showing 2 days ago here at the conference venue. So it's really amazing, because you have even tested it in the field and have been able to actually improve it already with the experience of many sites.
And sharing it with other people has led to, as you said, many design changes that ultimately now mean that the logger that we use is almost perfect for our needs. So it's really amazing to get to the point where we are now.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well done. And there's another question for you from Jimena Rosa. Regarding the locations for temperature loggers you have deployed. We are currently creating a time series of temperature in Bocas del Toro, Panama. I saw from your locations map that Panama is not included yet. Would there be a chance to include it? It's something you would be interested in?
I would be very much interested in Bocas del Toro. So yeah, that location specifically would probably be something for us to consider eventually including in the network. We didn't include the inside of the Caribbean Sea, because money can only take you so far. So what we already have it's quite a lot to handle for the next few years. But I think that for its geology and the location where it is and its own characteristics, I think that Bocas del Toro could be a good addition to the project. So Jimena, if you can drop an email and allow me, or maybe just send me an email, I'll write down my email on the chat, and we can get that conversation started. And by the way, Claudia is asking, yes, it is João Canigolo on one of the photos, because he's one of our main partners. We've been deploying loggers there, and we'll be deploying more loggers soon there.
Thanks. Oyatola is asking, apart from short trainings, does POGO or SCOR finances any applicant for master's degree in ocean-related courses? For POGO, no. We are not covering academic studies. It's more dedicated for short-term trainings, specializations.
Yeah, and it's saying, in addition to what was presented here, because POGO SCOR Fellowship is together with SCOR. SCOR has, in addition, another program called the Visiting Scholar, which is also not a master degree or anything like that, but you would have the chance for a researcher, for example, if you would like to have Rui come to your country and train a group of students for 1 week or 2 weeks, SCOR can support that. So it's a call that comes out every year around October. It's open from October to December, and then whoever, there are 6 vacancies open every year for 6 visiting scholars. If they are approved, then they travel on the next year. And this needs to be, there needs to be a plan together between the visiting scholar and the host. So how many students will we benefit? What are the goals of the course? What will they learn? And what will be the ultimate impact? But it's again, short courses, which is up to the university, if the students are in a university, to consider this course as part, provide credits for it.
Yeah, and POGO in the past has supported, maybe Sophie can correct me if I'm wrong, but we support master program training actually, such as the Benin one in physical oceanography, but not the student per se. And of course, there are several organizations that provide such a thing. And the best example is the Bascal program in Africa that have been providing master's and PhD programs for regional students. I believe I saw Bjorn in the audience.
Question from Whitney Friedman.
Yes, just saying that if Bjorn wants to mention or talk briefly about Pascal, we welcome his input here. I'm not sure if he's still there.
Whitney is asking whether about other geographic areas and the West Coast. I know there's people there, I just can't recall the name now. So maybe Whitney, if you can drop an email, I'll then direct you to them. We're sort of partnering with them so that they probably will also implement the same sort of strategy there. Ultimately, we're interested in everywhere, but again, as I said, there's only so much you can do with time. So that will come at a later event. We do try to partner as much as possible with people that are seeking funding, so we can help with some of the rationale in applications for funding. And if people want to replicate this platform elsewhere, we're more than happy to collaborate and to seek funding together, so that eventually we can deploy this in other locations. And definitely the West Coast would be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a few minutes, and I would like to hear some final thoughts from Radeka in terms of advice for people who are from small island developing states on how would what can they do best to try to implement, first gain more capacity and then also try to move forward within the plan that Carol presented.
Yep. So if you're an ECOP, an early career ocean professional, I would suggest getting in contact with Eugenia from the ECOP program, the global program, because we do have funding available to give to certain countries, to Africa, to the Caribbean, to Asia, to help certain people with projects, to put training in place or help them to go to a specific course and get more human capacity and training and whatever you need. So that will be one thing. And I think what to just say to support what Rui was saying, that you just have to be really creative and just step up and do a lot by yourself. For example, I was just talking to one of the people working with SCRAP, working in Fiji, because they have 300 islands and it's really hard to coordinate something and work with internationals. They just developed their own distribution center, which is on the main island. So the main island will buy all the things from the US and China and brings it to that distribution center on the main island. And then from the main island, they distribute it to do all the other little islands. So you just have to come up with really creative ideas. Of course, with the help of the Global North, you're not by yourself in that. And there are a lot of funding agencies out there that can help you. Norway is giving a lot of funding to Africa and to the SIDS in general Portugal as well. They just here at the conference, they dedicated a lot of money to support SIDS. So I guess in the next coming months, there will be a lot of proposals you can apply for funding and training. Just keep your eye out.
And I would like also to ask Carol for a few final words, especially because she presented at the end what IMBER and the INVISOs can do, and she's inviting to join this the email list and the community. So if you could explain a little bit more on all that capacity that happens through the IMBER summer schools and the INVISOs, that would be really great for the audience.
Sure, Patricia. So IMBER has an early career marine interdisciplinary early career network, and they run activities alongside all of our conferences, and they also contribute and lead our summer school called Climaco. So we have a summer school every 2 years, and we have an alumni society of all of the participants in that summer school, just as Pedro was talking about the amazing alumni from the work in Germany. And they suggest the topic for the next summer school, and one of the early career researchers from the summer school becomes the coordinator or the co-coordinator of the next summer school. So we're really interested in this action plan. We really want to try and bring together all of the organisations which already work in risk and categorise the different potential risks due to climate change. What we'll be trying to do is to run some seminar series that will be on webinars that will be open to everyone. We're hoping to create a sort of a module training activity that could be imported into all of the different summer schools. So I know that SOLAS also has a summer school. I'm sure you know of others as well. So if we created something along with the instructions for the instructor, perhaps a game of how you ranked the different potential risks to an ocean area. So you could choose an area that had 10 different countries around it, and you could all role play. The different countries would have, different perspectives, different prejudices, different priorities. So it's trying to increase that sort of negotiation, working with stakeholders, bringing in people from different disciplines, whether they're economists, social scientists, industries, policymakers. So it's the communication skills that we'd like to think of ways to improve that. And we're open to suggestions. Obviously, you all have experiences and you will know what has been the best way for you to learn. So zap that QR code, join the IMBER email list, and send in any comments, because we really want to progress this and we want you to be part of that progression.
Thank you very much, Carol. So with this, well, I would like to thank you all for attending our event. Please, as Rebecca just said, keep your eyes open. The opportunities sometimes pass and you just have to keep looking. If you apply and you don't get it, don't get discouraged, don't get frustrated, just apply again the next year or apply for something else. Just keep looking, and eventually you will get it. So thank you once again for your participation, and look forward to receiving applications from all of you, or any questions, please contact us at the links provided by Lika. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Michael.
Bye.
Hi. Bye.
And a round of applause for our speakers. Without the post, it's okay. It's going to still be recorded.
Oi, come back.
What?
Yeah, because we're going to take a break.
Oh, I just looked at it as well.
Group picture on speaker.
All right. All right. Yes.
Well,
Getting
summer.
Pedro, your talk was excellent. I was so inspired. I just went, wow!
Thank you.
I want to teach on those amazing courses.
Oh, that would be great, actually. Yeah. Actually, Lika was one of my teachers. I didn't mention it just to not disrupt so much, not to become
The best.
all circular, but yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
we're,
of course. One of the
if I
best.
may add, if I think that some of you are still here, Lika is a fantastic example of someone who has benefited and is giving back to the community, because she was one of the trainees from the POGO back in Bermuda, together with our also IODE, Murphy Brown, and now she is training back to POGO and to IODE, by the way. So Lika, that's fantastic. An example.
You need a trainer, call me.
Yes, we will. Okay, fantastic. And by the way, I've been in this same side event 5 years ago, and online is also a win situation in the sense that we had more participants than in the face-to-face side event 5 years ago in New York.
Oh.
So the online event was also a success.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you, and enjoy the conference in Lisbon.
There's some ovos moles and pastéis de nata aqui.
I will be in Portugal in August.
You can have them.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, Claudia. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Was nice.
Okay, I'll stop recording, okay?
Yes.